Hi, everybody. I am so excited that you are joining us today. Mostly, I am super excited about today's guest presenter. He is no stranger to the webinar series or the chiropractic profession, as I am pretty sure he is working even more since he entered retirement 2 years ago, traveling all across America, teaching everything from compliance to coding, documentation, Medicare, you name it. He's taught a class on it. He is our hands down one of our favorite go-to experts. When you ask questions that we're not really sure the answers to that, we're always going to be reaching out to Dr. Mario to get the answer to your question. What I love most is not only does he always have an answer, but he also has every resource to back up that answer. Because when he's not traveling and speaking all over the country, he's reading, those fun 3,000 page documents with updates that you doctors need to know about in the practice so that he can give y'all the best information. This past weekend, he spoke in Mississippi. This last month, he's been in Wisconsin at Logan and spoke for Illinois virtually. He's going to be all over the place. And when I'm lucky enough to be there at the same time, my heart skips a beat. Dr. Mario, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Now, I will tell you that when we talk about the ABN form, the ABN form is, that form has been around for a while, but what was very unique just recently is that Medicare actually they changed the ABN form every 3 years, but here it is mid season, if you will. They actually changed the regulations, and this year, make sure your front desk, if they're not on this call, make sure that they look. I believe this is going to be archived, and so you can look at it. People say, where's the notes? Hey, it's archived. You just keep going on and on and on and watch it until it sinks in, and make sure this is all having to do with your financial policies within the office as well, okay? So if you don't know who I am, where you been? But I've been around the circuit for quite a while, and I really appreciate ChiroHealthUSA and Christy for having me here today. I'm a chiropractor. I was in practice for 35 years. I did not retire, as Christy said. I went to Plan B. And so now, instead of working weekends, teaching, and seeing patients Monday through Friday, I just work 7 days a week. And so I'm certified in a lot of different things, CCSP, diplomate in pain management, but more for our talk here, I'm certified as a professional compliance officer, professional physician practice manager, certified insurance consultant, and I am in my 11th year of serving on the Medicare Advisory Committee. Ask Mario is my website if you want to see where I'm going to be. I'm coming up Albany, New York, but I'm going to be talking a lot through various sponsors virtually as well, okay? I will tell you, we are in a heap of change coming up with HIPAA and OSHA and everything else here. So if you're not aware of everything that I'm going to be talking about here and more to come, then go to my website or my blog, if you will, which is facebook.com, but make sure you do the /AskMario. So facebook.com/AskMario. I promise I don't waste your time. It's not like, what is your spookiest outfit for Halloween? Okay. It's coming as a Medicare auditor. Okay. No, I just made that up, but that's pretty good. But all you got to do is go to facebook.com/AskMario, like me, put me in your notifications when something comes up, such as Medicare sequestration, QMB, HIPAA privacy, all that here. ICD-10 code changes here. This is how you find out all that information. And so look back on it as well, okay? All right, I know your time is valuable, so is mine. So let's jump right into it and talk about Medicare. Now, this is not fluff here. Just try to get the gist of what I'm teaching you here. Number one, for active care with Medicare Social Security says that Medicare may only pay for items or services that are reasonable and necessary for the diagnosis or treatment of illness or injury to improve the functioning, and that's the key word here, the functioning of a malformed body member, okay? It's about function. That's what it's all about. Keep in mind that there are different parts to Medicare. There's A, B, C, D. There's F, there's G, there's N, okay? And it's like, oh my gosh, well, A and B are original Medicare. Part C is for confusion because that's the Medicare Advantage plan. And then you have Part D, which is for the drugs, which you need after studying Medicare. And then you have F, G, and N, which are all the Medigaps, okay? And F is fading away into the oblivion, and G and N are going to be the major carriers, okay? So again, active care, which the ABN form is all about this here, under Part B, which again, A and B are original Medicare, a chiropractor is approved for treatment by means of manual manipulation, which is both hand and device, such as an activator, of the spine, which is cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, coccygeal region, and the ilium or SI region. Everything else is extraspinal, and it's to correct the subluxation, okay? So that's setting up the template, if you will. Keep in mind that doctors, and I know chiropractors, this is the bane of their existence here. Why can't I opt out of Medicare? Or I do only a cash practice, okay? All right, you're not honest with yourself here. And this is the law, okay? This is the regulation here. Opting out of Medicare is not an option for doctors of chiropractic, period. Note that opting out and being non-par are not the same things. Chiropractors may decide to be par or non-par with regard to Medicare, but you can't opt out. So par doctor, a participating doctor, is in network. Non-par, you're out of network, but still par and non-par, you have to abide by the regulations, okay? And that's going to come up in the ABN, the new instructions for the ABN, okay? Keep in mind that when you perform active services, or if the patient wants you to file non-covered services, then you have to do it, okay? Now, Medicare says the patient must have a significant health problem in the form of a neuromusculoskeletal condition. That is a loss of function, okay? I'm just going to make it short and sweet so that you understand. How do we quantitatively look at loss of function? Well, it's not, oh, it's bad, it's good, it's so-so. No, it's a number. 34% moderate functional impairment, and that's through your outcome assessment tests, okay? Nobody out there likes forms. I don't like forms. Nobody likes forms except those who sell it, and I don't sell it, okay? So the key is you got to do the forms. The patient has to do it. Under active care, it's once a month, not just for Medicare, but it's for all care because everyone follows Medicare, Blue Cross, Aetna, United Healthcare, and so forth. Number two, you have to have a reasonable expectation of recovery or improvement of function, and that's your treatment goals. And then lastly, you have to have that subluxation, which of course is through part, okay? So in the various types of subluxations, an acute subluxation is one that's really self-limiting. It's like a no-brainer. I kind of tweaked my back. It's not so bad. It would have healed on its own, but your job, chiropractor, is to heal it faster. But think about it here. Your typical Medicare patient with a chronic subluxation is a condition that's not expected to completely resolve. So if you think about scoliosis, spinal stenosis, degenerative disc disease, how many of your Medicare patients have DDD? Yeah, I mean, it's like breathing, right? Okay, so DDD is considered chronic when it's not expected to completely resolve, but where the continued therapy can be expected to result in some functional improvement. So the question I always get, how do you know when a patient goes to Medicare? It's when functional improvement ceases to improve, which is at MMI. And then the next sentence ties in directly with ABN form. Once the functional status has remained stable for a given condition, MMI, further treatment is considered therapy and not covered. MMI, for any staff that maybe is new to this game here, MMI is maximum medical improvement, or MCI, maximum chiropractic improvement. So once they plateaued and they're at total improvement, now it's maintenance care, okay? And if they have an exacerbation, a true exacerbation, not an aggravation, but an exacerbation, it's a temporary but marked deterioration of a patient's condition causing significant interference with ADL. What does this have to do with the ABN form? Everything. Once I start to explain to you how to do that ABN form, all this here, now that it's in your frontal lobe there, it'll all make sense, okay? Keep in mind that number one, maintenance therapy includes services that seek to prevent disease, promote health, prolong and enhance quality of life. That's the newest theme park out there, Wellness World, okay? And if a patient wants to go to Wellness World, they have to have proper documentation. Number two, maintenance therapy is also to maintain or prevent deterioration of a chronic condition. Remember, chronic, you can't get rid of it, but now it's quieted, and so we want to keep it from getting worse. That's supportive care. So wellness care and supportive care, those are both subheadings of maintenance therapy, okay? All right, so now hopefully we're all on the same street here. So now let's talk about some modifiers, okay? All right, everybody put your hand like this, put it on your chin and say, gee, why doesn't Medicare cover stuff like exam and x-ray? That's why the GY modifier goes on non-covered services, okay? Now, if you have therapy, is GPGY on any therapy. United Healthcare, who follows Medicare guidelines, that it just gets GP because it's covered. But Medicare, any 97 code, 97110, 97 035 ultrasound gets GPGY, okay? The AT modifier goes on spinal manipulation, and that is for active care. And then we have the GA modifier, and think about it here, GA, that's not why they have these, but think of it as got ABN, okay? So in other words, you are stating, I have an ABN form on file. Now, if they ever ask you for it and you don't have it, ooh, that's fraud, you see, because you said under penalty of perjury and healthcare fraud, hey, I got it on file. No, you don't. Okay, you're in trouble. You're going to the big house. Okay, all right. So GA, that is maintenance care. Now, everyone listen to me, okay? You never can use AT and GA together, okay? All right? That's like pizza and a diet. They just don't go together, all right? You see, it's one or the other, all right? Okay, I found that out many years ago. So it's don't use AT and GA, and some doctors still put 98940 ATGA, and Medicare goes, dream on, buddy, okay? It's AT or GA. You declare, what is it? Active care or maintenance care, period, okay? All right, hopefully that makes sense. Now, when we talk about your financial policies, keep in mind that in Medicare, all the timely filing for Medicare Part B is 1 year from the date of service. Now, don't wait a year, because if if it's unprocessable, in other words, there's a mistake on the claim form, they're going to send it back. And if you go over the year, they're going to say, you can't get paid by us, Medicare or the patient. But keep in mind that if the patient tells you, even for non-covered services, I want you to file it with Medicare, you have to file it. Therefore, even in a PI case on a Medicare patient, you have to be authorized to treat Medicare patients, okay? I'm telling you this all for a reason, because this will all surface in that famous ABN form, okay? All right. So all active covered care for Medicare must be filed within the 1 year period. Claims not submitted by that 1 year time limit are provider liable, which means you don't get paid, okay? You just opened up a free clinic, okay? And if the carrier requests information, you got to send that to them. This here is the most deadly question out there. How much does it cost? And the answer to that is, according to your insurance carrier, we are not responsible for the insurance the patient bought. Okay? Let me repeat it. Everyone look at me. We are not responsible for the insurance the patient bought. We're almost apologetic. Okay? And when you get apologetic, you get apoplectic or whatever, okay? Epileptic. So the key is, you say, according to your insurance carrier, this is what your coverage should be, okay? And if they have, E. coli for an insurance company, then you get ChiroHealthUSA, all right? If you're not using ChiroHealthUSA, it's like, why are you not? It's like not wearing clothes. I mean, you just got to do it, please, okay? So the key is, ChiroHealthUSA will help with that financial policy and make you legal, okay? Doctors all the time, they say, how much? And your fee is your fee, but now you can't have a dual fee schedule unless it's under a managed care program, and that's what ChiroHealthUSA is a managed discount plan, you see, that the patient buys. And yeah, the patient buys it because it's approved as a discount plan in your state. Okay. All right. Now, and I know you might recognize your doctor there. Okay. He's the one with the white cane or the seeing eye dog, right? Okay. He just doesn't want to see things here. But doctor, you're the one responsible. You're going to see Bubba if you don't do it right. Okay. All right. Now, keep in mind, discounts get you in trouble. All right. And in fact, if you don't collect the copay and don't collect the deductible, most of the time it'll get you in trouble. Not always. There's some times where you can do that, and I'll show you there's some exceptions now. Okay. I just talked to a doctor just today, asked him about his accounts receivables. All right. He had no clue. And it turned out he's got thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in accounts receivables. And that's because you're living, in fact, paycheck to paycheck, which is whatever money comes in. So you want to get financial control. I'm not saying to call Mario, call ChiroHealthUSA. They will help you here and alleviate this deadly disease called staph confusion. Okay. The ICD-10 code for that is 666. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, keep in mind that any time of service discount can't be over 15%. In some states, it's 5%. If you're doing over 15%, okay, now you got to call CHUSA, okay, ChiroHealthUSA. All right, now, all that leads us, we're getting deeper into the water here about the ABN form. First of all, keep in mind that, and this is fairly new here, okay? You can read the slide or you can listen to me. Just listen to me first. In Medicare, there is a classification of hardship cases called the qualified Medicare beneficiary. Okay? Take some notes, write it down. You may not have a lot of them, but some portions of the country, rural area, certain areas, even in Mississippi and all, okay, you see a lot of hardship cases. and that patient is a qualified Medicare beneficiary. All right. They may or may not be on Medicaid. And how do you know that that patient is a QMB patient? Okay. Number one, if you check on their benefits, then it will say QMB patient. Number two, if you send in a claim, it comes back and it says, hey, this is a QMB patient. What does that mean to be a QMB patient? Because it is a hardship case, Medicare, and I bolded it right here, Medicare providers may not bill people in the QMB program for the deductible, the co-insurance, the copay. However, if your state covers chiropractic in the Medicaid program and you're involved with the Medicaid program, then you may have some other coverage. What does that mean? Come January 1st, folks, okay, write this down. The deductible is going up to $217 in Medicare. All right. It's $203 now. It's going up to $217. So that first $217 on that QMB patient, okay, that goes towards their deductible, but the patient doesn't pay it. Yeah, you heard me right. Okay, the patient, you can't collect from the patient. And so guess what? You don't get paid. All right. It's because they're a hardship case. All right. Okay. Now, going back to here, okay, a person who offers or transfers to a Medicare or Medicaid patient any remuneration that the person knows or should know is likely to influence the patient's selection of a particular doctor or supplier may be liable for civil money penalties up to $10,000 for each wrongful act. So what this means is that remuneration is without limitation, but now we're going to have to change it. Medicare hasn't changed it, but now there is limitation, waiving copay and deductible and transfer of items or services for free or for other than fair market value. Let me translate it for you, okay? What Medicare says is you can't give away free stuff to a Medicare patient. And if you do, it's a $10,000 fine per incident. However, there is now an exception called the QMB patient, and now for covered services, you don't collect from the patient. This is the one time where no out-of-pocket expense is not only legal, it's mandatory, and that's for your QMB patient. Now, before you go getting upset and hitting the scotch and everything else, just remember, how many QMB patients are you going to see? Maybe a lot, maybe hardly any, one or two. Just be aware, and your front desk people, they need to, I always say, do a pre-financial consultation. When that patient calls, you want to know what you're getting into. You find out their insurance right then and there, and then check. Don't wait till they come in. Okay. Now, remember, we cannot pay for referrals. And I think that goes without saying. But however, I know that certain people out there, they write the thank you notes, please accept this coupon for a free adjustment on your next visit. Please hurry in since I'm going to federal prison. You cannot give coupons for a free adjustment. You cannot give Amazon gift cards, a bottle of scotch, a free Cadillac, or anything else to people that refer patients to you. Period. That is the anti-kickback statute. That statute says that it prohibits you soliciting or paying for business or referrals. Okay. So don't do that. All right. Now, can you give a patient a gift? Yes. Okay. For what? I don't know. Taking a shower in the morning, and you can give them maybe like a tube of BioFreeze, $15, no more than $15. 5 times per year, that's $75. Okay. All right. Now, hopefully that was all review, except for that QMB. You may not have known about that. And now when I explain in the rest of our time here about the ABN form, it will all make sense, okay? All right, so here we go. Okay, first of all, this is the ABN form, okay? It might look like it's always been, but I just had another office, call me today and said, oh my gosh, we found out we're using the wrong one. Why? If you look at the bottom of your ABN form, look now if you can, look at the bottom of your ABN form that you use in your office. It's a CMS R131 form, but make sure that the expiration date is 6/30/2023. If you're still using that March of 2020, that form is wrong, defective, and it's useless, and the Medicare will make you pay all that money back. So if you're using the wrong form, you got to change that form today, immediately, and all those patients who have signed it before need to sign it again, okay? Now, that also means in 2023, guess what? Yeah, Mario will be back here teaching another webinar on the ABN form because they're going to change it again, okay? All right, now, let's look at that ABN form because many of you are doing it wrong, but I want to explain all the new stuff, okay? All right, first of all, the ABN form, it's called Advance Beneficiary Notice of Non-Coverage, okay? Now, again, you can read this, but listen to me first. All it is telling the patient, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Patient, okay, please be advised that Medicare is not going to cover this, and you're responsible, and this is how much it'll cost. Now, the patient can't even remember who you are because they have dementia or something like that, and so it protects you, the doctor, and your office from the patient saying, you never told me that, and that's why we get it in writing, and that's why they call it a limit on liability. But sure enough, just to keep Mario busy, on October 14, 2021, they changed the requirements, the regulations there, okay? But in fact, the ABN form is there to protect us, the doctors, and to protect the patient as well. If you were a patient or your parents or grandparents here, you don't want them being hit with, I didn't know I would have to pay $1,000 for this service. Why didn't you tell me ahead of time? Okay. But on the other hand, the doctor, it's like, we informed you, and now you're responsible for the bill, you see? And that's what the ABN form is for. These financial liability provisions, that's what this is here, apply only, here it is, that's why I taught you this before, to original Medicare, which is A and B. Now, most Part C's, first of all, a Part C Medicare Advantage plan is a private contract that the patient actually bought, just like if they buy CHUSA, it's a private contract for discount. They bought a private contract. Now, come to my class if you don't know Medicare. All right. I'm teaching virtual classes. I'm teaching online courses all over and live as well, even in 2022. All right. So askmario.com or look at CHUSA's website to see when they're sponsoring me. Okay. So in Part C, and write this down, it's not in your notes. In Part C, you want to call up each Part C, each one, and ask them, number one, do you follow the Medicare fee schedule? Number two, do you pay for services other than spinal manipulation? Most Part Cs now are paying for exam. Number three, do you honor or accept the AT modifier? Most of them do. And number four is, do you honor or accept the ABN form? Most of them do not. And they say, if it's not covered, don't even file it with us. Okay? So do you follow the fee schedule? Number one. Number two is, do you pay for services other than spinal manipulation? Number three, can we use the AT modifier? Number four, do you accept the ABN form? And the big thing is, most of them do not accept the ABN form. So A and B, B is our office, A are hospitals. So Part B is the ABN form. Okay? Now, There's two instances, and both of those have to be satisfied, or at least one of them have to be satisfied for the ABN form to go into effect. Number one, the items or services are denied on the basis of statutory provisions, which means by contract it's never covered. In other words, for chiropractic, other than spinal manipulation, it's not covered in Part B. Number two, involves determinations about knowledge of whether Medicare was likely to deny payment for items or services. I'm going to change that, okay? This is the Mario interpretation. Involves doctor determinations about knowledge of whether Medicare was likely to deny. In other words, the doctor, in your opinion, your professional opinion, is this service going to be covered by Medicare? No, I believe. And so, doctor, you're stating the fact. You make the determination, not the patient. And you tell the patient, in my opinion, these services will no longer be covered by Medicare. Therefore, at this point here, you are responsible for the bill. Do you understand? And the patient says, yes. And you go, okay, you will have to sign this document acknowledging such. And do you really want me to file a claim for non-covered services or not? And then the patient marks option 1 or 2. That's what it's all about, okay? Now, here's, as you see, new stuff, okay? And again, you can read this, but you won't hear. So let's do one thing at a time. Number one, there are doctors out there who are not chiropractors, who are not approved to see Medicare patients, and they want it that way. Well, that's fine. Then don't see Medicare patients. But if you touch a Medicare patient, even for acupuncture or any non-covered service, you have to be approved by Medicare as a provider. They want to make sure you're not part of the mob, okay? And that's what this says here. Only healthcare providers, I didn't write this, only healthcare providers and suppliers who are enrolled in Medicare can issue the ABN to patients. A provider or supplier who has failed to enroll in Medicare, either as a par or non-par doctor, may not issue the ABN form. Therefore, this form may not be a tool for entities to opt out of Medicare. And there they go. They clamped it down. Why? Because there's certain offices, franchises, whatever, who say, we're going to use this as a way to get out of Medicare. Dream on, you're smoking a bong, okay? All right? Okay? And that's new. That's a big, big deal here, folks. Okay? Number two, can I issue the ABN form for non-covered services? Now, this is where they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. Okay, look at this. ABNs are not required for care that's either statutorily excluded from coverage under Medicare or most care that fails to meet a technical benefit requirement. In other words, they're saying the ABN form is not required for non-covered services. However, CMS strongly encourages that you use the ABN form. What? Okay. Well, the reason why I think, this is my opinion, the reason why they're saying that is because they're saying the ABN form's not required, but you better make sure that the wording on anything else you use is the correct wording. Okay. And that's why they request it. Well, this is my opinion. Okay. But I'm just telling you, when it comes to the ABN form, okay, and this is kind of behind the scenes, okay? Medicare says the patient should know what their service, the patient should know what services are covered or not, okay? Dream on, okay? Let's get a dose of reality. Patients don't have a clue, all right? And then they're saying, since they should know, this is more like an informational flyer. So therefore, for non-covered services, listen to me, for non-covered services, the patient they don't need to sign it, they don't need to date it, and they don't need to serve an option. In fact, the patient can be just given on a piece of letterhead information, Or you can use other forms such as the NEMB form, and everyone looks around and says, what's an NEMB form? Ask Mario because he knows, okay? So in my opinion, if the patient doesn't have to sign it, I don't have to use the ABN form, then maybe what you can do is make you up your own. Okay, but make sure the wording's right. I'll give you some examples. Okay, and so again, here it is to further state it. When the ABN form is used for non-covered services, it serves as a courtesy flyer, if you will, in forewarning the patient that they're going to owe some money. The patient should not be asked to choose an option box or sign the notice. The healthcare provider or supplier is not required to adhere to the guidelines of the ABN form, which means it's worthless. Okay. All right. So what are you supposed to do? Okay. Here, I want to help you. That's what I'm here for. Okay. Okay. Now, people say, where did you get this form from? Okay. I made it up. All right. But the wording comes off of the ABN form. So put the clinic or doctor's name. Okay, the clinic address, city, state, zip, and telephone number at the front. Don't let them get you for any little thing. And then look at what I wrote here. Please be advised that your Medicare coverage for chiropractic only covers spinal manipulations that deem medically necessary. But I want to protect ourselves too, folks there, so I put this in. You are personally responsible for the payment for services that are statutorily not covered. Services have been deemed medically necessary by the doctor, your doctor, but are not covered by your insurance, your Medicare insurance. What I'm saying is Medicare only pays for spinal manipulation, and other than that, you're responsible, but the doctor has determined you need this. Okay, think of an exam as an example. Well, exam codes, as you probably know, they got rid of the 99201, so it's 202 for new patients, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 99215 for established patients. So therefore, depending on the service you are doing, there may be a range of prices. And that's why we put this in here. And if the patient goes, can you be more specific, then give them the price. You can always annotate this. X-rays, okay, you can put the price down or a range of prices. Electric stimulation. Now remember, in Medicare 97014 is electric stimulation for bladder control, and hopefully you're not putting pads down there. Okay, so we use G0283, and for United Healthcare you use G0283. Okay, so whatever, laser, 97110, rehab, whatever you do there, put that in, but always give them a price. That price has to be within 125% of the actual price. In other words, you can't say, well, it's going to be about $300 and it's really $100. Or you can't say $100 and it is actually $300. Okay. I say have the patient sign it and date it. Make a copy, give them a copy, and then you keep a copy in your records, okay? We have used this here, and it's really worked out fine here. I have many of my clients, I do consulting for offices all the time, personal coaching here, and Medicare has looked at this, and they've never thrown it out. They always accept it, okay? All right. So if you need to, take a picture of that right now with your phone, grab it, take a picture of it there, and you can use that, do it on letterhead. Now, as far as the font there, make sure it's not below 12 font. I would put a 12 or 14 font because Medicare, as you will see, is pretty picky on the font size that you use for Medicare patients, okay? All right, okay. I will leave questions at the end, so we'll take questions, but hopefully I will answer them all for you. So this is what Medicare says. A minimum of 2 copies, including the original, should be made so the patient and the doctor each have one, and the doctor should retain the original whenever possible. The ABN form must not exceed 1 page in length. Okay, by the way, the ABN form must not exceed 1 page in length. Okay, attachments are permitted, but you better think twice about it, because they're saying you got to have all the correct stuff on each attachment there and make sure the patient's name and everything is on there here. But the key is that if you need to, you can go to a legal size page or use a letter size form. I don't see any reason why it can't fit on a letter size form. Okay, so 2 copies, patient gets a copy, you keep the original. Fonts, they're saying you can use Arial, Arial Narrow, Times New Roman, Courier. If you say, well, how about a Roni? Okay, use it, and when you get audited, let me know how it works out. Do what they say, okay? Don't fool around with them. They're the flying monkeys in the Wizard of Oz, okay? Any other changes to the fonts, such as italics, embossing, bold, etc., should not be used, since they can make the ABN form more difficult for the poor patient to read. Okay, so in general, 12 font. You can do 14 to 16 font, sometimes 10 font if really needed here, and then you make sure that everything is legible if you handwrite it. Okay, now. Okay, this here is kind of your out. A patient's agreement to be responsible for payment on an ABN means that the patient agrees to pay for the expenses out of pocket or through any other insurance that they might have. And so just like Blue Cross PPO, you got to send it into the PPO, then Blue Cross sends it back to you and says, the patient's responsible for this. Medicare says you don't have to do that with us. The ABN form here, that tells the patient that they're responsible. And then the second bullet, the provider may bill and collect funds from the patient for non-covered services or services immediately after an ABN form is signed, which means you have the patient sign the ABN form and you collect that day. Regardless of whether they accept assignment or not, healthcare providers and suppliers are permitted to charge and collect the usual and customary fees. Therefore, funds collected are not limited to the Medicare allowed amounts. Now, here it is, folks. That third bullet there, that is a mouthful, right? Because what they're saying is you can't discount the normal fees for non-covered fees unless they're in a managed care program. So what's your normal fee? If you're like in Florida where you're charging, amounts because of your PI cases, so you're charging $95 here, the patient goes, oh my gosh, I got to pay $95 for whatever the service is. That's where you say, well, have you heard of ChiroHealthUSA? No, I haven't. Our office is accredited with ChiroHealthUSA, and therefore it helps patients like you who have junk insurance. No, don't say that. Who have inadequate insurance. You see, in other words, ChiroHealthUSA will, in Medicare, discount the non-covered services, but the spinal manipulation now, Medicare, and this is a gray area, Medicare says you can charge your normal fee or charge the Medicare rate. I say charge the Medicare rate. We charge our patients the Medicare rate, whether it's maintenance care or active care, because otherwise they become suspicious, confused, and accusatory. Okay? But for the non-covered services, what is your normal fee? Our fee is our fee. We call that the charge master, okay? And that charge master, if you normally charge $65 for this service, the patient has to pay it unless they're on ChiroHealthUSA. And now you can give a percentage of a discount. You want to call. So ChiroHealthUSA.com. Okay, if you don't know how to use it or you don't use it in the office, call them. It is your life preserver. It'll keep your office afloat. Okay, in my office, we have literally hundreds of patients on it. Okay, that's what that's all about. That's why I'm here teaching it to you. Okay, now obligation to bill Medicare. Upon receipt of the ABN, the patient always has the right to ask you, the doctor, to submit a claim to Medicare for an official payment decision. And that's whether it's covered or non-covered. In other words, you have to file covered services with Medicare, or if the patient needs the services filed with Medicare to get the denial for another insurance or for their flex plan or their HSA, then you have to file it. If the patient just says, oh, I don't know, just file it with Medicare, you got to do it, period. You don't have a choice, okay? And so if the patient says, I want you to file it, they mark option 1. Okay, second bullet, healthcare providers or suppliers will not violate mandatory claim submission of the Social Security Act when a claim is not submitted to Medicare if the patient requests not to file it with the Medicare under option 2. In other words, any patient has the right to direct you, the doctor, not to file it with an insurance company. Okay? The patient, under HIPAA law, HIPAA regulations, has the right to modify the disclosure. In other words, I don't want you filing this with even my State Farm, my Blue Cross, or with Medicare, whatever they choose. Okay? So the patient can direct you, and here it makes it easy because they direct you through option 2. Option 1, you have to file it. Option 2, you don't file it, period. Okay? All right. I call it, this is Mario's term, buyer's remorse clause, okay? But this is copy and pasted from the instructions, okay? By the way, this instruction manual for this one-page ABN form, it's like an IKEA. You know, if you ever bought a dresser from IKEA, you got to put it together. The manual, the instructions are 34 pages long for one-page ABN form, okay? Okay, you want to read it? No, I read it. I interpret it, okay? First bullet, if after completing and signing the ABN form, the patient changes their mind, the doctor should present the original ABN form to the patient, and the patient annotates or makes a little, I rescind this agreement, okay? The annotation must include a clear indication of the patient's new option selection along with the patient's signature and date of annotation. In situations where the notifier, the doctor, is unable to present the ABN to the patient in person, then the doctor may annotate the form to reflect the patient's new choice, okay? So the patient always has the right to go back up to a year later to say, I decided I want you to file it after all, okay? All right. Now, before you read this, just listen to me, okay? Medicare says that as long as you're not changing thing or the situation doesn't change, that the patient doesn't have to sign a new ABN form, okay? And the way I think of it, remember that new theme park Wellness World that I told you that just opened up, okay? To get in there, you have to have a passport, all right? That passport is the ABN form. So it's like, Tilly, I don't think we're going to get you any better than, it's bone on bone here. This is as good as it's going to get. However, I do recommend that you get checked once per month so that we keep you afloat, okay? And so Medicare won't cover it. It's up to you. What do you want to do? And the patient says, well, thank you for giving me the option. I'm coming to you, whether Medicare, pays for it or not. Great. Sign this ABN form. Now the patient goes into Wellness World, okay? They slip and fall in Wellness World, and now they come back to active care. So under active care, you change box 14. The diagnosis might even stay the same, but the treatment goals change again. And now see them, twice a week for 2 weeks. Once the patient is back at MMI, they're going back to Wellness World. You need to sign another ABN form because every time you go from AT to GA, that patient has to sign a new ABN form. But as long as they're in Wellness World, the GA land, they don't have to sign a new ABN form. So no more of this. And we never did recommend it in the first place, but stop it. Okay, you don't have them sign it every visit. In fact, Medicare says it's unduly alarming the patient. Okay, all right. That's what this all means here. An ABN form can remain effective for as long as there's no change in the patient's health status. ABN may describe treatment as long as no other fall or situation occurs here. If a new fall occurs within the 1 year period, a new ABN form must be given. Okay, so the ABN form can stay effective for, I recommend once a year have them sign the new ABN form. That's what I recommend. Update the paperwork, just like, your HIPAA, emergency contact list, stuff like that. Okay, now, if you have the ABN form on electronic, let's say a kiosk, and the patient just signs it electronically and dates it, what this says here is that you can do it electronically here, but when the patient signs and dates it, you have to give them a paper copy no matter what. Okay? All right. Now, remember that QMB patient I talked about? Okay. Under no circumstances does a QMB patient have to pay for covered services. So in the option 1, we have to modify it. And so therefore, you can download that form through cms.gov, okay, document or download the ABN form in Microsoft Word, okay? And then you cross off, and this is it here. Take a picture of it if you need to. You may ask to be paid now. No. Okay, the patient's not going to pay if this is the QMB patient. And then I understand that if Medicare doesn't pay, I'm responsible for payment. No, because again, that's for spinal manipulation, QMB patient, you cross it out. Okay? All right. So that's important. That's why I taught you about the QMB. If the patient has QMB coverage without full Medicaid coverage, then the ABN could allow the provider to shift financial liability. Okay? In other words, if the patient has full Medicaid coverage and Medicaid denies the claim or will not pay because the provider does not participate in Medicaid, then the ABN could allow the provider to shift financial liability. Okay? And so again, basically what it means, like as an example, in Illinois, Medicaid does not cover chiropractic currently. It's about to change, okay? So therefore, the patient, if they have Medicare and Medicaid, Medicare doesn't cover it, and they're a QMB patient, Medicaid doesn't cover it, so now the patient pays for non-covered services, okay? But co-payment and stuff like that here, therefore, the patient may not be responsible for it, is what they're saying here. Okay, now remember, this is the ABN form. All right, I showed it to you earlier. Let's talk about filling out that ABN form in the remaining time. Number 1, the header. I will tell you on the ABN form, the number 1 problem with the ABN form is the header. Okay, that header has to have the clinic name or doctor's name. You can put the logo if you want to, okay, but put the clinic or doctor name. Okay, why clinic name? What if there's multiple doctors in the office? Then put the clinic name there. The clinic address, city, state, zip, telephone number. What if I have a satellite clinic? I would say if that patient is always going to the satellite clinic, have an ABN form just for that satellite clinic, okay? All right, now, when we look at the patient name, okay, keep in view that the name itself must be exactly as it is on the card. If it says John L. Smith III, you have to put John L. Smith III, okay? So I always tell my staff, for any insurance, the way the name is on the card, call me Chip. No, you're Charles, okay? All right. Now, the identification number, never their social security number. never the MBI number. Okay, it's an account number. Frankly, we leave it blank. All right, you can put your own internal account number, but not the Social Security number, not the ABN. Okay, not the Social Security number and not their MBI. Sorry. Okay, now in the options, okay, I filled it in here, and where it says I want the blank listed above, I like the word services. I want the services listed above. Okay, the patient must answer or must mark the box themselves. There was one doctor who had option 2 pre-printed up on all his ABN forms. That cost him $40,000. Okay, don't do that. Okay, so fill in, services. Okay, now how often do I issue a new ABN form? Okay, again, notifiers, doctors may give a patient a single ABN form describing an extended or repetitive course of non-covered treatment. Okay, if applicable, the ABN must also specify the duration of the period of treatment. If during the course of treatment, additional non-covered items or services are needed, the notifier must give the patient another ABN form. Okay, so what they're saying is you can use the same ABN form for spinal manipulation as an example. And if you do, in the box H is where the additional information, you can say like patient is scheduled once per month for 12 months. Now, if the patient falls again, that's AT. But then once they go back to GA, do you understand? It's that transition point between AT and GA. That's where they get the new ABN form. Okay. Now, the signature must be that the patient has to sign it, and the patient must write the date. The patient signs it, and the patient must write the date. There was one office, they told me that they were stamping the date in there, and Medicare audited it, and they had to pay back the money. Okay, don't fool around with Medicare. Okay, you don't want to make Mother Medicare mad. Okay, all right. How many of you are non-par ABN or non-par doctors? Sorry. Okay, for a non-par ABN, you have your own ABN form, and again, you look in option 1. You see where we crossed it out. So what's the difference? We have the non-par doctor, we have the QMB patient, and then we have the par doctor. If you're a non-par doctor, you cross off that bottom line right there in the option 1, and then, but the QMB patient, it'll be the top line and the bottom line of option 1. You see that? And here in box H, this is exactly what Medicare said. This supplier doesn't accept payment from Medicare for the items listed in the table above. Okay, I'm responsible for this here. All right, I had a doctor say, well, can I change the wording in box H? Go ahead and do that, and when you get audited, let me know how it works out. Are you nuts? No, just keep it the same. Okay, so take a picture of that, if you need to as well. Okay, all right. Hopefully we got through that and it makes sense. Okay, if you have further questions, number 1, I'll take some questions now, and I don't know if you see any there. Number 2, if you want to, my email, doc@askmario.com. Hey, I know we have a lot of different states on here. Okay, hey, I'm booking right now. January, February, March is almost all 100% booked here. So if you want me to speak in your state association, tell them you want Mario, and tell them to give me a call or send me an email to doc@askmario. Okay, all right. Christy, I'll leave it up to you, and because I'm done. Okay, so what questions do you have, if any?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Can a Medicare eligible patient be a cash patient and not use Medicare, or do we need to use Medicare and ABN first?
Okay. And I have to be careful how I answer this. Okay. Medicare says you don't give a patient an ABN form unless it's non-covered service. Okay. Or you don't expect Medicare to pay for spinal manipulation. Okay. And what you're saying is, and I hear you, is like, can we use that ABN form to opt out of Medicare? The answer is no. Okay. But sometimes we get these feisty individuals, because who's on Medicare? Old hippies, right? Okay. So the patient goes, I hate the government. Da, 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 da. I don't want you to file it with Medicare. Now you say that's fine. And now they sign the ABN form. But you can't coerce the patient, and you can't, in other words, you don't give the patient the ABN form until and unless the doctor believes that the service will not be covered. In other words, the patient's paying for this insurance. They have the right to use it.
Okay. Can you clarify the QMB with Medicaid secondary? We don't take Medicaid.
Well, you don't take Medicaid, but does Medicaid cover chiropractic in your state? So therefore, if you don't take Medicaid and you're not a provider with Medicaid, then you have to inform the patient, first of all, and then the patient may be liable for certain services. Okay. Keep in mind, Medicaid is state controlled. So we have 50 Medicaid programs out there. All right. So in that case there, if the patient doesn't have coverage, then you may collect from the patient. It depends. So therefore, it depends on the state. Every person is a different situation. Okay. And I know it's a little confusing, but if there's any coverage for the patient under Medicaid, Medicare says file it with them. Okay. But in most instances here, what's really going to be affected is the spinal manipulation under active care. And if they have not met their deductible, it may be for free. Okay. That you'll have to treat the patient. Okay. And I know it's confusing. That's because we have so many different Medicaid programs here. And, you may want to send me a follow-up email just to explain what state you're in and the situation. Okay. All right. And I'm sorry I couldn't be more specific there, but it just depends on the Medicaid program. And yeah, if you're not in Medicaid, you don't accept Medicaid patients, the patient may be liable for that portion of the bill, but that's just the other 20%. So in other words, does a Medicare patient, they have Part B, and do they have a Medigap? Well, now the spinal manipulation is covered. I will tell you, a hardship Medicare patient will never have, I don't ever see them ever having a Part C, because they have to pay separately for Part C. So therefore, Part B, do they have a Medigap? Then Medicare Medigap, but the non-covered services, the patient pays for that. Okay. All right.
Okay. If we are providing functional medicine without manipulation, must I provide an ABN form for Medicare?
Well, obviously the functional medicine would be a non-covered services, right? And so the answer is an ABN form or some other form. And I gave you examples of those. Okay. So you got to inform the patient in writing that the services you provide are not covered under Medicare. Now, the other question I expected was, we do functional medicine, we don't do spinal manipulation. Do I have to be in Medicare? And the answer is yes, because Medicare has to know that you are an approved provider. Now, if you don't file, at least before it was 6 active, 6 claims per year, your number is deactivated. So if you do any spinal manipulation, then it'll be less hassle if you file 6 claims to Medicare per year or 10 or whatever, to keep your number active. But if you're doing 100% functional medicine, and I represent my clients do that, then you have to inform the patient either with an ABN form or use that form, that example I made up that I gave you, and have the patient sign it. Okay. All right.
So speaking of that form you gave an example of, several people are asking, they are completely all digital. Can they create a form like that and use it online because they want to remain a paperless office?
Well, I addressed that in the class. Yes, you can, but the patient still has to get it in writing. You have to print it up.
So we also had a question that said, if a patient does not want a copy of the ABN, do they need to be documenting that somewhere?
I would say, this is what I say. I've never had a patient say, I don't want it. Okay. We have to give you a copy here. Okay. If you don't want it, there's a trash can right there. Okay. But I gave it to you. All right. That's what I would tell you. Okay. Okay. You are obligated, and tell the patient, I am obligated to give you a paper copy of this form. So here you go. I don't want it. That's fine. Throw it out in the trash right there, but I gave it to you. Okay. Frankly, patients are going to take it. They're going to throw it out at home. That's fine. Okay.
If they're scanning the original ABN into their electronic health records and shred the original, is that okay?
Everything I have read, okay, now I'm not a lawyer, but everything I have read, it's yes. Okay. But make sure that that scan comes out and you have it, backed up to the cloud and everything else. Because if you ever lose that for any reason, you're in trouble. Okay. But remember, Medicare said if you issue it electronically, it's fine. But again, even if you scan it, you have to give the patient a paper copy.
If a patient selects option 2 and then later, after receiving services for 6 months, changes their mind to option 1, would it be retroactive?
Yeah. They can change their mind, and because you have 1 year to file a claim, right? They can change their mind anytime, up to a year. Okay. And that's why, and if you rewatch this class when it's available, it will be available, won't it, Christy? Right?
It will be. They'll get a link to it in about an hour.
Yeah. So rewatch it, because I talk about the buyer's remorse clause there. The patient can, and then you have to annotate it, and then you got to go back and file it. Okay.
Sorry, I thought that was on silent.
Anything else?
Oh yeah, there's so many questions. I'm trying to go through here because I see several are repeats. If a patient picks option 2, does that mean the Medicare is not billed for the visit at all, or do you still have to bill for the adjustment?
No. Well, the only time you have to bill for the adjustment if it's AT modifier. Okay. But if the patient chooses option 2, in other words, if it's AT modifier, you wouldn't give them an ABN form. But if the patient goes, I hate the government and they're a bunch of, whatever, and I don't want you to file it, then they sign option 2, and then you do not file it. Okay. If you file it, if the patient marks option 2 and you mistakenly file it, that's a HIPAA violation.
For non-covered Medicare services, should both the ABN and the form that you suggested be used, or just one or the other?
One or the other.
If you sell a portable TENS unit to a Medicare patient, should they fill out the ABN form?
Yes, because as a chiropractor, Medicare will never pay for that TENS unit, so it's a non-covered services. Okay.
Okay. If we are a non-par provider, but the patient picks option 1, do we still have to bill to Medicare?
Yes. Period.
Does a part form need to be done on the same day as the ABN form if presenting with a new injury?
The part form is completely different from the ABN form. The part form, I don't use a part form. I use SOAP note, but that's like saying, is a SOAP note have to be done? Yes. So, however, if you use a part form still, okay, most of us don't, then yeah, you got to do it, because keep in mind, that's a whole nother class. Come to my Medicare class. Okay. Okay. Whatever state you're in, I'll probably be coming to your state sometime. Okay. And, or virtual. And, so the bottom line is, okay, say that question again here real quick.
Does a part form need to be done on the
Yeah.
same day as the ABN form if presenting with a new injury?
Okay. Simple answer, yes, because part proves a subluxation exists. Okay. Do you have to use a part form? No. Okay. All right. Save paper, save a tree.
So the ABN form has to be signed at the beginning of care and when they go to maintenance?
No, only when they go to maintenance. AT to GA before they get into GA. You do not have them sign it preemptively at the beginning. They did away with that maybe 4 years ago now.
Does Medicare ever pay if GA is used?
No.
Okay. For example, if my normal fee for an adjustment is $70, but for Medicare, can I just charge them 40 or whatever Medicare normally pays instead of the 70?
For spinal manipulation, you charge them either your normal fee or the Medicare fee. No in between. Okay. Non-covered services, you charge them your normal fee or the CHUSA fee. Okay. That's a question. If you're in CHUSA, which you probably are, then call up the staff at CHUSA and they will tell you. But non-covered services, regular fee or CHUSA rate. Spinal manipulation, regular fee or Medicare fee for non-covered GA modifier. But if it's AT, you take whatever Medicare approves. Okay, whatever they tell you to charge.
If we are non-par with Medicare and the patient is a QMB, do we not collect anything at all?
It depends on, it depends on the situation if Medicaid is involved. Okay. But in most instances, you will not be able to collect from the patient for covered services.
Okay, this is a good question. Why must you file Medicare for non-covered service? Why would the patient ask if it has been explained to them?
Because if the patient says, as an example, okay, I have an HSA account and I have to show that the insurance company didn't pay for it for me to take a tax deduction. Okay, boom, you got to do it. Or the patient says, I have a flex spending account from my husband who's still working, or wife, or significant other, whatever, and therefore I need the denial from Medicare to put it towards flex spending account, such as orthotics. Okay. Or the patient goes, I don't trust you and I want you to file it with Medicare. They don't have to have a reason. You just got to do it. Okay. But if the patient needs it, I understand. I had an HSA account, and so I needed the denial to save those receipts so it goes for my tax advantages.
All right, that is it.
Okay, boy. I don't know about you guys, gave me a headache. So, all right. So I'm glad we got through. This was an important class. Okay. Things will change. Okay. Don't use this as gospel, because in 2022, I know there's sequestration changes coming up, HIPAA privacy changes coming up, more Medicare changes coming up. The best thing is attend a class, okay? It's worth the drive to keep your practice alive. That's what I always say, okay? So whether it's virtual or otherwise, come and see me, okay?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mario. Next week, we'll be talking about OSHA's COVID-19 standards, managing risks for you and your staff. So make sure you click the link to join us next week with Dr. Scott Munsterman. And again, don't forget to visit askmario.com and to follow him on Facebook, which everybody at CHUSA does, because he is usually the first to post any new information that we need to know. Great reminders and the occasional funny cartoon, I will add. So definitely follow him. I also posted that link in the chat box as well. Everybody have an amazing rest of your day and a fabulous week. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, Christy.